All right, guys, I'm out and about and I wanted to share some stuff while I'm out. So I had a business meeting. Guys, when you're in a business meeting, it's usually more than a business meeting when you're networking. There's usually friends you have made and relationships that have encouraged you. What does real leadership look like, right? We have systems and we have all this advice for leadership, right? Which has its place. It does. It's important. But as somebody was talking today, real leadership is sometimes in the quiet. It's people who make you feel good, right? Sometimes we talk about people who might know things or think things, but it's people will not forget how you made them feel. So we were really encouraged today just with somebody talking about how important it is to be there for people, to remember their name. I was at Walmart last week and I ran into a woman from one of my networking groups and stopped and encouraged her. You know, that is important, guys. Relationships are so important. And the more I'm around people, the more I see how important relationships are. And of course, I mean, I've always been around people, but I have more time now to invest in others. So I met up with one of these authors that I know, and I had said, "Hey, I just want to let you know that your book was a blessing to me." So we had talked in her book. She has this chapter about making peace with her mother, and we had talked about the mother-daughter relationship. And I had shared with her, you know, how my mother just totally rejected me. I mean, she's like, "Oh, it's too hard to have a relationship with you." The end, right? So, I had talked about that. We had talked about, you know, her mother and different things that had happened with her. And she had said, and this again, just like the last video I did, you cannot control how people treat you. You just can't. All you can do is control how you respond. So she's like, you know, it really is about how we choose to respond to our parents. Like, you know, some parents have had a hard life and it happens, but that victim mentality doesn't play into that. You know, there has to be a time after a while when someone says, "What about you?" You know, you were, you know, like in the case of a forced abortion, you lost your child. It's not just about your mother having a hard life and not being there for you. It's you also lost a child. What about your life? So when we talk about pro-life stuff, which we've seen some of the money freezing to Planned Parenthood, but you know we have millions being frozen to them right now with them killing babies, but they are a billion-dollar company. So to have like only an amount of that's so small to them, just millions, it's nothing for the work that they do. So, so they are, they're not really going to be affected that much, but we are seeing stupid laws, um, especially in Colorado here, as I happen to get over here. And we're seeing a lot of destruction with families being torn down. I just talked to a guy today who said um, his brother had two girls and his wife, and he always wanted a boy, but the mother chose to have an abortion instead, and how painful that was. But yet he still felt it's always on the man. It is always on the man. Instead of getting them off the hook, it is their responsibility to care for their child, right? Instead of blaming women all the time, it is usually the man's responsibility. And in my case, the man was taken off the hook, you know? So, as I was talking to her about, you know, the mother-daughter relationship and how destructive that can be, it is good to talk to an older woman about things that happen. And there's a million things that happen, right? But how you choose to respond. And I had said, well, I think I chose the right way to respond because I had put up a lot of boundaries in my motherhood with my mother. And, you know, and I was talking it through and she said, I believe you did. And I talked about, you know, just the grandparenting issue. You know, I'm the grandparent, so I can do what I want kind of thing. So we talked that out, and it was healthy. And I said, she goes, and it is important to be like, who am I? To have that boundary up and be like, I'm not my mother. Who am I? And I said, I like myself. And she said, I don't even know you that well yet, and I like you too. And that was a nice compliment, because it was unexpected, especially some of this work stuff I've been talking about. And so, what does that say? How does that make you feel, right? I felt really loved and accepted, having an older woman embrace me in that way. So, when you have a very rejecting mother or father, you have to realize it is them. It is not you. And that takes a lot of work to get through. It takes a lot of work to be able to come out of that, guys. And to be like, it's not you. You're not the black sheep. It's them. So, you have to be able to do that, and you have to be able to be like, who am I, right? So this is part of relationships, and this is part of the pro-life stuff. When I was talking to this person, I said, when I was in Manchester in front of Planned Parenthood, there were a lot of mothers bringing their daughters to get an abortion. And I did see a father and a son, and I'll never forget this picture with this young girl, and she's holding on to the father's shoulders and her boyfriend's shoulders, and she could barely walk. And I was telling him the story, how she was as white as a ghost, and how they had ambulances there constantly. And the media will not tell you that stuff. So, I felt so much compassion for her, and I was telling him the stories of how difficult it was to be on the sidewalk and see girls going into the Feminist Health Center in Concord. They got their big stomachs, and then they come out, and they don't have a child anymore, but they're so lied to and brainwashed. They're like, thank you so much, and they're hugging the escorts. Thank you for helping me. And it's like, did you realize they did not help you? They just killed your baby. So this is the stuff, guys, that it's important to have support and get through and be strong in your space. I watched something the other night that said, are you easy prey? Are you easy prey? How do you carry yourself, and how do you expect others to treat you? How do you walk? So I was thinking about that today, and I walked by a homeless guy, and he reached out talking to me, and I did take up my space more. And I'm like, the way I walk, am I easy prey? And I did reach out to him, but we want to be careful that we don't look like easy prey with the way we walk, the way we talk. And we want to make sure we are very confident in our own space. This is why I have built her up, because if you build a woman up, she's not going to be easy prey to abortion.